On this episode of the Soul Twin Stars podcast.
I have a suicide. I have a killer, a violent killer, who killed his victim, and his victim died at the same time, and they are in afterlife together.
Well, in spirit, when people cross over, there are a lot of people that report being in a black velvety void.
And just understanding why we're here, or even asking the question first, is so important.
I used to have very bad nightmares about death and wake up from a sleep and have panic attacks.
You're a hoe for the sky and I'm a hoe for the guy.
Hi, I'm Lady Shadow, a witch with much to share, stirring the cauldron with magical self-care.
Hi, I'm Peaceful Nick, a medium divine. I chat with the dead and interpret every sign.
We are Soul Twin Stars, best friends through it all.
From spells to healing, we're answering the call.
From moon cycles to menopause and making peace with the dead.
We aren't afraid to talk about what's rarely said.
So tune in each week to get raw, real, and wise.
Let's talk about a spiritual life with absolutely no disguise. Welcome to the Soul Twin Stars podcast, Uninhibited Spirituality. Peaceful Nick and Lady Shadow here. We would like to first and foremost thank our sponsors for this episode. Thank you to Nadine Gordon-Taylor, intuitive artist, author, speaker, and teacher. She's also the visionary creator behind a series of soul-stirring oracle decks, including the Animal Love Oracle cards, the Heart Path Oracle, the Crystal Clear Oracle deck, and the highly anticipated Plant Spirits Oracle, arriving this fall of 2025. Her work blends mystical insight with artistic mastery, offering tools that inspire a deep connection and inner wisdom. Explore her full collection at thirdeyestudio.com, THIRD.istudio.com, or experience her magic in person at her beautiful Peekskill, New York storefront, the Third Eye Studio. To purchase her oracle decks, please visit innertraditions.com. Also, thank you to Beans and Buttercream Bakery. Delicious homemade treats shipped anywhere. Call 417-973-2352. And Abernathy Photography, based in southwestern Kentucky, a professional and stellar company providing drone photography in both local and destination weddings. Visit abernathyphotography.com. Author Mary Ray's self-reflection workbook on conquering shame and guilt, Tell the Devil to Go to Hell, an interactive memoir, is available on Amazon.com. Craving delicious Italian cuisine? You can find it right here in Westchester County, New York at Fino Restaurant. That's F-I-N-O Restaurant at One Baltic Place in Croton-on-Hudson, New York. All of our sponsors are linked up on our Soul Twin Stars podcast Facebook page, and we thank them for making this podcast possible. And now, back to our episode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back once again to the Soul Twin Stars podcast. I am Peaceful Nick, the medium, a medium divine, joined by the wonderful, as always, Lady Shadow. Hi, Lady Shadow.
Hi, Peaceful Nick. Are you peaceful today? Because I am.
I'm pretty peaceful today. I had a pretty good, productive day. Got lots of work done. How are you? Are you peaceful today?
Yeah,
Good.
I really am. I'm feeling the peace. The drama is limited this week, thank goodness. And we're back to living life in full cosmic throttle. So speaking of cosmic throttles, do you have a divine moment this week, Nick?
I have a couple divine moments. One, I got some Moonology Oracle cards this week, and I'm super excited because anybody that knows me knows I'm a hoe for the sky. All things moon, all things sun, all things Mars, all the planets, constellations, all of it. I love it. And these moon oracle cards are amazing.
You're a hoe for the sky and
I'm
a
a
hoe
hoe
for the guy.
And also, I spent some time with family this weekend. My youngest son and his bride were here over the weekend, and we went to the Magic Kingdom, and we went to Ohana at the Polynesian, and it was delicious. We're celebrating my husband's birthday, and we had a fabulous and wonderful time. It's always divine when you spend time with family.
For sure.
Not always divine. Sorry. Let me restate that for those of you who don't have divine moments with your family. It's always divine when you have moments with your family that you choose to spend time with, that you have a healthy relationship with, not the other ones. That's what I meant to say.
It's divinely eye-opening when you spend time with the wrong family members. That's all. Either way,
One
it's still divine.
100%. It's divine one way or the other. I love it. How about you? What are you working on? I know you got some stuff going on over there.
Oh my. Well, I am working on my 17th off-Broadway play, and this one opens November 4th in New York City. So excited for that. And it's called Afterlife. So I have been in spiritual, creative mode, channeling the universe over the last few weeks, knee deep, if not deeper than the knees, in the creative process and channeling these characters and putting absolutely wonderful scenarios and depth on the paper for my future audiences in a few months. And super excited to get this play up and running. We've already sold some tickets. The script's not even done, but we start rehearsals in a couple of weeks. And the journey that writing takes you through, whether you're journaling or whether you're writing fiction like I am, it's still to the brain the same process. It's the same journey of working through emotions and feeling feelings, whether through the characters or through you, right? And so it's been so inspirational. I would not want to trade places with Stephen King for $1 million. I read about him and he talked about, as being a writer, that he has such dark thoughts sometimes
Mm.
that he has to channel these stories into stories because he can purge himself of them. But oh my gosh, I don't sit around and think about dark shit at all day long. It's quite the opposite. But I understand the need to tell stories when you have this raw inkling or a raw idea that you feel like has to come out and be birthed into the world. But him writing nothing but horror all these years, I can't imagine living in a horrific place all the time to
Right.
get something on the paper like that, because I'm fully immersed in my characters. But if I had to be fully immersed in horror as he is when he's writing his genre, I would probably have nightmares every night because I wake up breathing and living my characters because I write at night. And so when I put down the keyboard at 5 a.m., I'm still thinking about all of this. And if I had to be thinking about Carrie, Cujo, The Stand, and Misery, all those
Right.
crazy horror genres, yeah, I would literally lose my mind. So it's a fascinating process. But that brings us to our topic today. I'm so lit with fire and excitement for this play and thinking about the afterlife and all these different scenarios I'm creating based on cultures around the world and religions around the world, and also just human experiences and near death research or after death research. It's been absolutely eye opening. And so my divine moment is literally just the beauty of going through the process of creating this new material. And at the same time, it's reflecting what all of us will be facing one day at some point.
I love it. And just I'm lucky to be your BFF for all these years. And I get sneak peeks of your plays before they get released to the public. And I did read part of it today, and it is so beautifully written and so carefully constructed that I just can't wait to see the full play come to fruition. It's going to be wonderful. I love that you are tackling this subject because there are so many avenues that you can go down. And I know I'm not going to give anything away, but I know you're going down some avenues in this play.
I'm going down a lot of avenues yeah, for sure.
And
And we'll talk
yeah,
about that shortly. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And the afterlife, I'll just give a little brief history. For me, I used to have very bad nightmares about death and wake up from a sleep and have panic attacks several nights a week for my whole life into my 40s. And one day in my 30s, I asked my friend who's a psychologist, I said, I don't know what to do. I'm having all these nightmares. And she said, learn more about death. And I thought, well, that's the last thing I want to do. Like, why would I do that? That's terrible advice. Well, lo and behold, she was right. And Krista Kay, if you're out there listening, thank you because you were right. And now that I'm a medium, when I became a developed medium through my mentor, I stopped having those nightmares. And I think in the last 7 years, I think I've had two panic attacks in 7 years. And both of those times I was under stress for different reasons. But it really, dealing with the afterlife on a daily basis, changed how I feel. I don't have that fear of death anymore. And I know a lot of people have a fear of death.
Yes. And I think even those with no fear of death still fear leading up to the death, which is the suffering and the pain and watching the loved ones, you know, lose their minds over the loss, which is completely understandable because we've all done it and we're all going to do it when we lose someone first. And that's the precursor, I think, to our own death, is having to go through losing someone we love so much first. And that's almost worse, obviously, because we have to sit and live with that for the rest of our lives and that loss. But I love that you are in that place. I can say that I'm maybe, even with doing all of this research and spending my life thinking about life and death and writing about life and death, because honestly, all of my plays have some tinge of subplot that talks about why we are here, our meaning in life, and what happens after. Even if it's just a little conversation piece, a mini scene, a full scene, whatever it is. I wrote another show called Angels Among Us, which is all about the angels that have passed before us and who watch over us in this life.
I
And
love that play. It's one of my favorites you've ever made.
yeah, and thank you. It's actually one of the most popular, most produced plays that we do because of its not only commercial but emotional appeal. But yeah, I'm only at probably like 70% of being okay with death because I still don't know. I mean, none of us really know. We get messages, we get experiences, we get other people's ideas and their tales of what happens when they've had near death experiences. But in researching this play, Nick, I can tell you that not everybody goes into a light. Not everybody goes into a peaceful void. There are people that have documented their experiences not being the beautiful, glorious thing that we have all been told that is guaranteed. Now, that could be for several reasons, and I'm exploring that in my play as well, which we'll talk about here shortly. But it is a fact that not every single person who dies for 3 minutes or 10 minutes comes back to tell us the same story. And that is very interesting. Now,
Yeah.
from your perspective as being a medium, from what you hear from clients and when you talk to the other side to bring messages to the living, what is your most default scenario that happens right after death?
So I want to say a couple of things. One, in my own, because I also have researched the same thing because I'm a medium and I have to work in this realm all the time. And what I have found about the people who have a negative experience during a near-death experience is that is a manifestation of their own fears and traumas that they haven't worked through. And at the moment of their passing, they have this negative experience. It's very different with the brain scans of people who have that experience versus the people who have a positive experience. So that's from my research and my experience. When I connect with spirit, I have done thousands and thousands of readings. I can tell you that I have never had a negative entity, a negative spirit, anything negative that made me uncomfortable ever. Never, ever, ever. I have had spirits show me negative things they did as humans. I've had spirits show me horrible things that happened to them as humans. Things that I won't repeat here because it's, not safe for radio, but they show me the things that happened to them and things they did as humans, which are terrible. But I've never seen any spirit who was negative or demonic or anything like that. I don't believe in demons as, like the opposite of an angel or anything like that. I've never experienced it. But I believe, based on my experience, that when you pass, because your soul is what scientists call non-local to your body, your soul doesn't stay in your body forever. Only a little piece of it stays in your body. You have an oversoul. And when you pass away, your soul goes up and out of your body, and you can see Most people report 360 degrees, up, down, and all around. You can see everything happening. Some people don't even realize that it's their body that they're looking at after their body passes away. It takes them a few moments to say, oh, that's my body down there. What happened? So sometimes the soul isn't actually sure immediately what happens. And then, within a few seconds or whatever, they're like, oh, yeah, okay, that's me, after the car accident or lying in the hospital bed. And so my experience is the soul releases from the body and then goes is to the spirit world, is greeted often by loved ones in spirit. Sometimes if they made a lot of bad decisions on earth, they're greeted by a guide or a teacher in spirit, a teacher soul, and they kind of have to get reoriented. Maybe they meet with the council and they're like, you know what, you did some bad stuff. Let's reorient and see what went wrong. So that's my experience in mediumship.
Yes, and I love that. And I love that you have never had negative stuff come through. And we've talked about this before. I mostly have experienced negative spirits just for a clipping when we're doing a paranormal investigation and we haven't maybe properly entered a haunted location that has been maybe cleansed and greeted properly first, because we'll have a group that maybe will, like, in front of a storm and it kind of disrupts the energy, just like if you're walking into church being super loud and drunk and there's a service going on. Okay, that's the best analogy I can use when you are crossing over energies that's, quote, inappropriate, and then witnessing the reaction or the consequence of that. But in real life, there are several scenarios that can present itself when we pass. And some of the research that I'm doing, I've been asking friends of friends to tell me, has anybody in your family passed for a while and came back? What did they experience? So I've had some interesting situations to share, and I'm sure you will have as well. You have, for instance, your son's situation where he's not afraid to die either because he also saw the other side. And that was pretty comforting to hear from you, because you live close to somebody who can say directly, hey, I had an awesome experience and I am not afraid anymore, at all. It was more traumatizing for me to probably come back in the physical, Mom, than it was for me to experience what I did. Is that kind of what happened?
Yes, he was in a diabetic coma. We didn't know he was a diabetic because he was healthy and happy, had a lung surgery, spontaneous collapsed lung, in a coma, in and out of awareness and consciousness, and had some pretty profound experiences. And later, he hasn't gone into all the details, and maybe someday he will. His body was pretty traumatized from the experience as well as his psyche. But he did say that it was such a comforting feeling of peace that he is not afraid to die because he knows that it will be very peaceful when he transitions. And the physical part and emotional part was horrific, but the part where he's not afraid to pass over, he's very satisfied with knowing that it will be peaceful and something that will be very comforting and not scary. And
Yeah.
he was 15 when it happened, so it was a whole thing. It was a whole thing.
Yeah, I remember. And I was with you through all of that. And I remember how heavy that was for him. And that would be heavy for any child whose brain's not fully developed to comprehend such an experience. But he was very courageous and brave, and that's what matters. And then he lived to the other side to tell about that. I feel like I've spoken to people across the gamut on this. So I've known really negative people that were super narcissistic and self-abusive, abusive to others, and they have reported immediately going into the light. Oh, you're forgiven. It's cool. You're good with yourself. We're going to still do the life review with you, but welcome, because God doesn't judge, and God's supposed to be all loving, all knowing. And this person's ego, for whatever they did, authentic to their narcissism, perhaps they were just confident in going to that next level, so the light showed immediately. Other people who, like you were just saying, perhaps victims or those who hadn't processed their trauma fully but have never really hurt anybody else, who are mostly just victimized themselves can often also be caught in a strange void where the light is not appearing yet for them. And maybe that's because, like you were saying, a deep self-loathing that doesn't think that they deserve the light. Like you said, the ego is not presenting itself as worthy per se. And I think that in that space, that soul obviously definitely moves on when it feels comfortable and okay with the safety of moving forward. I think that hopefully we have complete sovereignty when we pass, and we can go where it feels the warmest and the safest for our consciousness at the time of death, which is why we're here today, because you and I and our fellow light workers and our fellow human beings out there listening and or not listening are all on a journey to hopefully stop our 9 to 5 chaos and say, hey, why are we here? Maybe I should work through some of the stuff that doesn't sit well with me instead of just covering my life with distractions and addictions, and try to work through some of the things that deeply still hurt us and show its ugly head later throughout our lives. And that way we can not only just prepare for death in the next level, but your life that's remaining could be so much richer if we could start facing those fears now and thinking about them and being comfortable with them. And I think that all of life kind of prepares us for death at the same time, because like you said, we have to deal with death amongst our friends and loved ones, our pets, loss of friendship, even if not through a death. A divorce can feel like a death. It's all these little things are preparing us. And sleep, when we go to sleep, we're not in our full consciousness anymore. We're turning it over to our subconscious. So we're not really sure where our brain is going to go when we go into a deep REM cycle. So it is such an interesting perspective to remind ourselves every so often that we indeed have an expiration date as well, even though we don't want to think about it. We go on and we make plans. And that's one of the key scenes in my play, because we visit 7 different sets of people that have just woken up in their afterlife. And they're all very different circumstances. I have a suicide. I have a killer, a violent killer who killed his victim, and his victim died at the same time. And they are in afterlife together. That's going to be a fascinating watch. Then the scene that you read was a couple who met up with each other, both died relatively young for different reasons, heavily embedded in a religious belief, and they're lovingly together working their way through their afterlife. But it's just everybody has their own beliefs and circumstances in which they have to interpret getting to that point, getting over that point, and just understanding why we're here, or even asking the question first, is so important.
Yeah, I have a bunch of points that I want to say. One, quickly, on Earth, in the United States at least, because that's where I live, we often interpret the colors of things to have meanings. We assign things like something very dark is bad and something very light is good. Well, in spirit, when people cross over, there are a lot of people that report being in a black velvety void, and that's not negative. They don't feel negative. And light is, the light is positive in these experiences, but we need to let go of our preconceived notions for some of these things. That's just a minor point. We also, during a life review, so just because somebody is narcissistic and they cross to the spirit world and they come back and report a wonderful NDE, that is not the end of their story. They just didn't go through the whole process. So because if someone is very negative and mean and a quote unquote bad person, they will have a life review where they feel the pain that they caused every person or animal or plant on earth. Anything they did to affect someone else negatively, they will feel that pain. Also, they will feel the pain of the victims of those people as well. So it's kind of like an exponential pain. It goes on and on and on until your soul gets the point of, oh, wow, I really messed that life up. I really need to, not be that type of person if I go back again. And most people who say, I'm not going back to Earth, I'm not going back to Earth, most of them do come back to Earth because we have so much soul growth to do. And the point of our human life here is for our soul to grow closer to the source, closer to quote unquote God, closer to being a mature soul that is pure love and light and unconditional beauty and wonderfulness and no ego. Ego death is part of that. So that's the point. That's why we come back. We come back in groups of the same people over and over again. So let's say I have a relationship with someone that's dysfunctional in this life. Now, my next life with that person, I may be the dysfunctional one and they may be the good guy, right? That's saying I'm pretending I'm the good guy in this scenario. So we all come back with different roles over and over and over, and you get reincarnated over and over and over with the same group. It's called a soul family or a soul group. And you have a primary soul group, a secondary, a tertiary, and on and on. So we all say, okay, I'm going to come into this family. This is going to be my mother. These are going to be my siblings. This is going to be my father. I'm going to be the scapegoat in this family, right? And so you have like this outline of a life plan. Nothing is set in stone. You can always make other choices because you have free will. But the point is to grow your soul.
I agree. I agree for the most part. I also have to address a couple of things. So, for one, I do believe that we grow our soul to the point in which we feel is necessary, because none of us are going to live this perfect life that warrants zero hurt on either side. It's impossible to live as Jesus did, if you believe in Jesus, that even he had a little bit of a temper when he flipped the tables or whatever it was at the market.
That's right.
Yes. So even Jesus had a few moments of imperfect karmic debt, right? He could come down and heal people and love them unconditionally, but there was still he was still a man and there were still flaws. So at what point does a soul get to say, as a sovereign soul, hey, I'm good no matter what you show me in my life review, and no matter how many people that my good life reflected hurt back to someone else, I'm going to be okay with that. I would like to move on now to a different civilization, a different planet. I'd like to reincarnate into a different type of being. I think that we are the ones that ultimately get to say whether or not we'd like to come down to the earth or go to another earth-like realm to live a different situation. And I only say this because I am very, very aware of the very awful sex trafficking and torture subculture that goes on in this world. And there's an immense amount of suffering that goes beyond normal suffering. And it is nothing that a person could control. They were either born into it, bred into it, or taken captive and forced into it. And these are innocent people, often immigrants, homeless, runaway teens. There are a lot of vulnerable communities that are susceptible to these horrible conditions in which people take advantage. And at no fault of their own, they suffer immensely. Children even suffer immensely under the hands of very nefarious people. And I feel like trying to get an innocent soul to sign up to come down to earth to say, hey, I want to learn immense suffering and die at 12 years old and be abused my whole life and never see the light of day or never have a normal loving relationship with a parent or a friend. I just want to be sold into slavery. Thank you. I feel like something like that would be allowed on a planet, because sometimes when you give free will too much to certain humans, as we know, with people in our government who are doing horrible things and celebrities who are doing horrible things, we have to acknowledge that no one is really volunteering to literally just be someone's sex puppet or torture puppet. That's unnecessary amounts of torture and suffering. That's non-consensual. And so I need to stand for those victims and say, if you're listening or you know someone who's gone through this, that there's no level of spiritual law that's going to convince me that soul had to come down here and endure this just for the entertainment purposes of a perpetrator. That's absolutely, I'm sorry, there's no convincing me. So I do believe that there is another level of the way we re-enter the earth, and that if it's not by choice or by design, there could be another, and this is just presenting another side. I don't necessarily endorse this, but there could be something called the soul trap, which is something that is gaining momentum around the spiritual community, where people are talking about that, yes, a lot of people come here by choice and they come here with free will and they agree to certain parents and situations, but that others are coerced for entertainment purposes per se. And because they're either naive or a new soul, or they're trapped in an energy that we can't explain. And that would be perhaps related to, like, if this were a matrix, which is also a possibility, or this is a simulation, which is also a possibility, in which case the computer programmers can just create avatars and send them down here, whether they have a soul spark or not. Now, again, I'm just presenting this because I've had to do research across all situations in order to write what I'm writing and represent everyone's possibility of what the afterlife could be. And trust me, I have my own beliefs. I'm setting them aside. I'm just the presenter. I'm just the bearer of weird news. But the idea of the soul trap is that you are coerced to come back here and not necessarily given all the information and told, yes, you have done bad things. You have done too many bad things. You have hurt too many people. So you must come back. Bad person. We love you, but you're going back to do it all over again. And we all know that nobody is going to be as evolved as Jesus. We all know that none of us are going to evolve to the point of perfection so that there isn't some kind of karmic debt that somebody can hold over us, right? So we have to discern with our free will when we have free will, because again, an innocent child who's sex trafficked from birth does not have that choice. We have to discern at what point we are done here. And we also, I feel like if the beings that meet us in the afterlife, if they are forcing us to come back here and not giving us a choice, and there have been incidences that I've researched where there have been both scenarios. One, you're given a choice. How do you feel? Would you like to stay? Would you like to go through this door? A, B, C, this civilization, this planet. There's a choice offered. Or you can just hang out and be an angel. Or you can take a rest for a few years, which in Earth years, maybe 3 million light years, whatever you want to, however long you want to chill. But then there's that other scenario where, nope, you come here and a being can appear like your mother, a being can appear with whatever person or energy you admired the most. And they use that being to coerce you into a path that you would not normally choose by a false being. Now, again, I'm not endorsing any of this. I'm just saying that this is one presentation as a writer that I had to explore in order to be fair to all of those who have experienced, what they've have researched as well. So I have to give credit to everyone else who is trying to report honestly and all these different possibilities. So I'm giving a voice to all of the mainstream, all of the non-mainstream scenarios. That's all I'm doing here. Sometimes when I think about the unnecessary amounts of suffering that go beyond what you and I have suffered together in our dysfunctional families is really nothing compared to what a lot of human beings are subjected to. So that also needs to be explained, I think.
I have 200 things to say.
Oh, good.
You covered a lot of information.
I did. I'm sorry. I have nothing else to cover. That pretty much was it.
So, as a victim of sex abuse myself for many years, this is a very delicate subject for me, but I know that our soul is very different from our human brain. They are not one and the same. Human beings are evolved from animals. Animals have animal desires. Sometimes your animal desire takes over anything your soul or guides or God or anything spiritual can tell you. You just completely disconnect from anything of source, soul, the collective consciousness. You're completely disconnected because your animal brain has taken over. The animal brain is what makes all the bad choices. It is not your soul. Soul is, dare I say, innocent. That's my experience. Now, there is no person I've ever met that will probably be evolved enough to go on and not reincarnate somewhere else. And I often hear people say, even I think Dolores Cannon, Earth is the hardest planet. I kind of find that very hard to believe. I kind of find that very hard to believe. I feel like there are billions of planets in the universe that have sentient beings on them. And I imagine there are other hard planets just as hard as Earth. And Earth sucks. Like there's a lot of bad stuff that happens here. There's a lot of horror. I mean, we see it in the news every day, all the terrible atrocities. And I will say, people, when they sign their quote unquote soul contract, don't sign up to be sex trafficked from, 3 years old to, whenever they finally get taken out. Nobody's soul contract signs up for that. We sometimes get taken into a direction that wasn't in our contract because another person's free will, they decided, I'm going to be the worst human possible and I'm going to take these kids into sex trafficking. Nobody planned that. That was the human brain just in its full ego. Nobody planned on that in their soul contract. Things in the soul contract examples are, I'm going to be born into a family of addicts. I'm going to be born into a family where my mom dies when I'm 4 years old. I'm going to be born into a family where we live in a castle and I'm lonely and then I commit suicide when I'm 12. Things like that, not mass sex trafficking. That's not an option on the multiple choice of soul planning. That's humans being in their full ego, being disgusting and horrible and having no connection to any part of their soul. They're just completely disassociated and probably have severe mental illness. Anybody that can do that is severely mentally ill and shouldn't be a leader of a free country. Anyway, I digress.
Exactly.
The other thing, I've never studied anything about a soul trap, but I've never had any information in anything I've studied where people were tricked into coming back. Like I've never experienced that before. I've never heard anybody that I work with talk about anything like that. I believe that the collective consciousness, God, source, whatever it is people believe the name of it is, I do not believe that there are nefarious beings that would do that. It's not my experience. It's not my belief. Um, so I don't think that happens. I think a lot of times, if you watch social media enough, you'll see people who claim to be psychics and mediums who are saying very negative and horrible things. Those are underdeveloped, egotistical people who have not done their deep trauma work. And this is one of the worst parts in mediumship and any other spiritual work. When people become trained, quote unquote, to be a spiritual healer, but they haven't healed themselves enough to be able to do the work in a positive way because they're carrying all their negative crap into any of their work that they do. So we have to understand source, God, the collective consciousness is positive. It is not negative. And anything negative comes, again, I'll circle back. Anything negative comes from our animal brain, period. Look at lions. Lions are chasing down gazelles and killing them and eating them, right? That seems like horrific to a 5-year-old kid when they're watching it on a documentary. But that's their animal instinct. We have those animal instincts. They just breed right out on the Sahara, right? The male will breed one female, then another female, because that's his instinct. We still have those animal instincts, but we also have a soul that's supposed to guide us and lead us, and we're supposed to listen to it. not everybody does.
Yes, I agree 100%. And I do believe our source soul is absolutely pure love, because we wouldn't be able to experience pure love if there wasn't a part of us that is pure love, right? And I'm 100% on board with that. But there have been a lot of deep, deep researchers. Patty Mikowski, a guy from Canada, spent 20 years living with monks and doing deep, deep soul work and trauma work. And he very much feels that this is a simulation with a soul trap. And if you are not careful, you could get recycled right back in. And that it is indeed run by nefarious energies. Again, I'm just putting out there that whatever people are researching and finding, that we kind of need to be open to any possibility, just so that we can all have just a little bit more information. Because, like you were saying, yes, you don't sign up for that kind of trauma. You sign up for mid-level trauma, right? Not to be tortured and then killed before you're even of a voting age. But the fact that the people that are allowing this kind of horrifying situations to exist, unfortunately, those are the people in power, and those are the people that are covering it up.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, if our power structure allows it, then that gives the green light to the little guy to say, well, if they're doing it, we're doing it. And I really despise a system that allows that kind of torture and justice and suffering. And so you do have to wonder if the people in the highest places are allowing this and encouraging it in some form, as we know from the Epstein files and all the other stuff that's coming out, the Diddy files. What God are they answering to? I'm curious, because if it's not the same God that you and I are answering to, we got a problem.
I believe that God is the God of the universe, and everyone has to answer to the same source. It's the same collective consciousness. And those people will, they'll pay the price. They're not going to just get away with it and go back and get a hug by God. That's not how it works. There's so many levels. We could talk for like 20 hours, I'm sure, about this. But the bottom line is you do get, I'll say, disciplined for your actions on earth. There are some horrible, horrific people. I have people that were preyed on me, we'll say, will pay the price for what they did. But I've gone through a lot of therapy and had a lot of support, and I'm okay. I still have moments, I still have flashbacks, I still have days when I'm stressed. But like you said, there are people who've gone through much more horrific situations than either of us had in our lives. And I realize that, and I'm grateful for the life I had. But all of the things that happened to me in my life led me to become the healer that I am. And it's strange to say, but I'm grateful for all the experiences I had in a way that allowed me to become more compassionate and understanding and empathetic and, telepathic, because I had to always have my alerts up all the time, 24/7. So I always ask, what came first, trauma or telepathy? I
I
think
love that.
I think it kind of evolved together because you have to have heightened alerts when you're being traumatized repeatedly. So you develop extra senses because you have to be hyper aware of when the next thing is going to happen.
Right. And we are lucky that it couldn't have been much worse for us, and that we came out already somewhat resilient
Hmm.
by having what was thrown at us, because like you said, there are levels of suffering. It's just that being an empath like you, I can't help but feel the weight of those who are suffering deeply. And then it's out in the news. It's right there for us to read about the testimonies of these kids and these women and even boys and men by our own celebrities and government. It's so painful for me
Yes.
to fathom. And it's a system that's allowing this. And so, again, if the most powerful and rich people on this planet claim to respect the same wonderful, beautiful, loving source that we have, we can't help but think, A, like we've talked about before, These people are trapped in a trauma loop and they're doing what's been done to them.
Yeah.
So do they not deserve a hug by God when they cross over? Should they be horribly punished, or should they receive so much love and forgiveness for what their fathers and mothers did to them and their fathers and grandfathers and mothers did to them? How do we break a societal trauma loop like that? And how do we break it before we enter the afterlife so that we're all clear that this whole beautiful planet can evolve together better, not worse?
I think that both things happen. I don't see the life review where the soul feels the pain they caused as a punishment, but they do get enveloped in love. They do get enveloped in love, but they also have to know what they did and be quote unquote accountable. I've said quote unquote like 5 times, so sorry everybody. It's appropriate for this episode. But yeah, they will be accountable, but they also will be enveloped in love.
Yeah. And also, there's tough love, right? So, a good parent, like you, for instance, you're a wonderful parent.
Thank you.
And that includes, right? That includes your rational distribution of tough love, you know, and your rational when, how, and if to apply it is absolutely genius and brilliant. I've seen it. If I were to duplicate myself as a parent, I would step into your shoes because you had such a wonderful way of observing honestly and not with the mom blinders, which you just don't meet a lot of moms who can look at their children honestly and say, hey, this is what they really need. Kudos to you, because you and your family will be no problem going through your life. You'll be breeze on through. You and I
hope so.
Many of us, I think most of us, I think 90% of us will have a good, standard, meaningful, self-aware life review. Or if we're not ready for our life review, we can go hang out and rest in a cloud and just be a guardian angel. I think there are so many ways that you can transition. And I think if free will is really a thing, we'll get to choose when and how. And like you said, maybe reflect, just like this AI shit, right? The AI is there to just reflect and mirror your own consciousness, and it picks up very quickly what you're mirroring.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same in the afterlife. I think when you get to the afterlife or when you're in this life, I think everything is mirroring your consciousness back to you. Everything you see and experience here, I think it continues on the other side, but with a little more knowledge, like you said, about community, togetherness. We're all from the creator. We're all a piece of that. And in the end, that's the happy part of the story, is that we are connected. We do have a soul spark. Of course, there are this other thing that people have proposed, the NPCs, non-playing characters. That's another interesting culture of spirituality. And I'm sure that you listeners, some of you have heard about that, where they're just rendered people who don't really have a soul, who just they're biologically human, but they walk around and they're just supposed to parrot the narrative and they're just like extras in a movie. It's very interesting.
It's funny. I said that for years.
Really?
Years and years, from back in the days of San Francisco, where there'd be all these people, and I used to say, are they just extras in this movie?
Yes, you were smart to think that. Yes.
Yeah, just walking around in the background. That's so funny.
Yeah, and you know what? We wouldn't know, because we all cannot possibly know everybody.
Right.
We can't possibly know everyone's story. I'll tell you one really quick story before we dissipate here in our wonderful talk. I was sitting in Manhattan one time, waiting on a street near Park Avenue for my husband to get out of work. I was in a car. And this guy walks by, and I'm a very observant person. I like to always know, I'm a New Yorker. I'm always knowing what's going on in the background, always extra vigilant, right? Because that's just what you do in New York for 15 years. And this gentleman walks by, and he wasn't walking human. He was walking like Max Headroom would walk. He even looked like Max Headroom. He had this waxy skin that was almost too perfect. He had this really weird hairdo that was like a golden blonde, like a Ken doll. And every piece of hair was perfectly styled. And it even had like the shadows of the style, like a Ken doll, like as if somebody painted on his hair. Okay, it was the most bizarre thing. And he swung his arms really mechanically, And he didn't look at anyone passing by. People that were walking by him were, of course, heads in their phones and just not paying attention. And here I am looking up, and he didn't even make eye contact with me. He was just straight on, not blinking, walking in this very strange mechanical way. He did not look human. It was the weirdest. Nobody else seemed to notice him. And he was wearing a suit. I remember it was navy, like a navy suit. He didn't have a tie, but he had a nice collar shirt. And he had that perfect, like I said, that waxy skin that looked like he was literally just put into a coffin. It was the strangest thing. I remember I just sat there mesmerized and watched him pass my car. And I kept looking. I was watching him go down the street. He didn't turn his head. He didn't move his hand motion or his legs. They kept this really strange gait. And I had this really creepy feeling. Like that was definitely the perfect definition of an NPC. And literally 10 minutes later, I picked up my husband and I said, oh my God, I just witnessed the weirdest thing. To this day, it haunts me. It was the weirdest thing, Nick.
I remember you telling me that story a long time ago.
Yeah, I probably did tell you that because
I know because I watch a lot of alien stuff and weird shows. And one of the things is the hybrids. Now I know this is off topic, but one of the reportings are the hybrids wear this like fake skin to look human, but if you look at them close enough, you'll see that they're not. So fascinating.
That could be what NPCs are, just alien human hybrids, just kind of emotionlessly going through this life, and they're just fillers. Who knows?
So I have a question to wrap up here. So if anybody is still listening, I want to know your opinion on this question because I'm always, I'm a scientist and I'm also a medium, and I always think about these things weirdly. When you clone people, because we're probably cloning people. I'm sure somebody's doing it, even though it's illegal in the US. I'm sure it's happening somewhere.
It is happening. You are absolutely right.
When you clone people, does a clone have a soul? Don't give me your opinion, Lady Shadow. We'll talk offline. I want to hear from the audience. Comment below, send us emails, go to our Facebook pages. Does a clone have a soul?
That is a great question. And also, if you all have any other opinions about what we talked about today, NPCs, soul traps, afterlife situations, please comment and send us emails. We welcome them.
We are very excited to hear from you, and we've gotten so many messages already, and we are compiling a list of Q&As for one of our episodes. So please continue sending us your questions at soultwinstars@gmail.com or comment on any of our videos anywhere. Just let us know. Thank you guys all for being here. Lady Shadow, as always, it was a pleasure. We look forward to our next episode. Thank you all so much. We love you all.
Thank you so much for joining us this episode for the Soul Twin Stars podcast. Find us on our podcast Facebook page for Magical Mondays live at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, where we will help you magically slay your weekdays, and for awesome giveaways. For more information about what other spiritual things Nick and I do and offer, visit peacefulnickthemedium.com. That's Nick with just a K. Or to connect with me, Lady Shadow, soulsandspirits.com is the place to go. If you want to be a guest on one of our shows, we would absolutely love that. Contact us at soultwinstars@gmail.com. See you next Friday. I'm on Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Apple Music, Facebook, and on YouTube. Sending you all so many blessings. Thank you so much for joining us, and until next time, know that you are all cherished.